Fun fact, 1 in 10 or 11 people in the world is already a member of a cooperative. Communities are understanding, and there are platforms and instruments and things like that that are facilitating it.
Hello everyone, Namaste. Welcome to AI Nama, a podcast by Vadhwani AI. This is where we discuss what is shaping our digital present and future. I am Nishtha Gorke and I'm joined by Astha Kapoor, the co-founder and director of Aapte Institute. Hi Astha, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. This is such a pleasure.
So let's begin with the very basics and the center of your work. What would you define community-led data governance as, and why do you think it is important for AI?
Okay, this is a very long answer, so stay with me. So we know that, and a lot of work has already been done on this, but we know that data about you and I is used as a collective good. So, we represent data about women, we represent data about women in India, we represent data about women in India of a certain age. And so when it comes to targeting of products, say on our Instagram timelines, they're not targeting you and I specifically. However, when data protection is activated in the context of law, it is done so at the individual level. So, as we know from the data protection legislation in India, we know that when we think about rights, it is privacy of personal data. So, there is a disconnect between how data is governed and how data is used by platforms. So, as I mentioned, data is governed at an individual level, but data is used at a collective level in a certain sense. And so, it is in that context that we think we need to start thinking about community rights. And community is a very complex thing, right? As I mentioned, communities that represent you and I, and we may not be in a community of lived experiences, but the platforms have identified us and put us in a community for targeting. But we may have shared lived experiences, we may have some homogeneities in our ways of the world, we may have joined some Facebook group or whatever, if people still join Facebook groups, but on certain issues, and that also puts us in communities. So thinking about communities is hard, but community data rights is important because that is how extraction and targeting occurs in the current platform economy. I think it's important because we are not able to negotiate with platforms at an individual level. The way that you interact with a platform currently is through very basic, this is the notice, this is you give consent, accept cookies, deny cookies. That seems to be the only instrument for you as an individual to exercise your data rights. The legislation also says that once you consent to something, that's it, like it's open season, right? Because if you don't do that, I think that will leave us much more vulnerable and in a position where our data is being extracted, our protections are individualized and weak, and we are not able to negotiate the terms of that extraction. We're not able to negotiate what that extraction is used for or the benefit. Now, in the context of AI, to your question, this becomes even more so about communities, right? Which is that we are all putting in, individualized queries into large language models. And I must pause to say, I'm currently talking about large language models and not other older forms of algorithmic decision making, etc., which are all AI and also all about collective rights. But in the context of large language models, we know that a lot of information, is being scraped from community resources, right? So that's the first part of why we need community rights. The second is that the information that is also being done is being done on probabilistic basis. So you may have a query, I don't know, on certain kinds of skincare or hair care or whatever, and that data is then also being sort of rephrased back to me on my queries. So that extraction is also communal in a certain way. We have been told all of this time that this is a personal device, personal data,
Yeah.
personal account, but that is not how the cookie crumbles at the moment. And that is why there's to me, a really, really big gap in the way that we govern AI.
Very interesting. So, as you were speaking, I had two parallel questions. One is communities. You talked about communities, and at least in your explanation, what I understood of communities is possibly people like us, maybe, because perhaps those were the examples that you used for now. So, one of the question that I have now is when we or when you, in your realm of work or in your practice, look at communities, what have you created some distinctions of communities as well? Is there a demographic? Is there a layer or a particular lens that you look at communities from?
Yeah, so I think that when I think of communities, I mean collectives. And those collectives can be anywhere, right? It can be collectives of women in our offices, and it can be collectives of women in an Anganwadi. It can be any kinds of collectives. Now, I think that your question on demographics, and if I understand that correctly, is that, how do we think about much more marginalized communities in the context of data governance? Because because the examples I've given are like of Instagram and things like that, and that those are not the only communities, right? So if we think of in the context of a lot of our work at Aapti Institute has been around women's collectives in the form of cooperatives, for instance, or in women in agriculture and things like that, where again, like I think that where a lot of data is being generated by women, it is being sort of used by platforms, and there is a disconnect between the data generators or originators, and these women can be generating data as members of a cooperative. They could be generating data as data labelers. They could be generating data, as we've seen recently, in the form of like ASHA workers and Anganwadi workers, who are all doing enormous amounts of labor around data. So how do we make sure that these communities are enlivened as well as all of us? I'm very interested at Aapti, and that's the work that we've done around how can we use existing offline communities like cooperatives also as a mechanism to steward, govern, collectively negotiate on data issues. And we are very big fans of cooperatives because cooperatives are, existing infrastructure that have like stood the test of time. Fun fact, 1 in 10 or 11 people in the world is already a member of a cooperative. And they already have a mechanism by which they pool labor, they pool capital, and they have a mechanism of governance around it, which is one member, one board. There's a board. The board has a fiduciary responsibility to the members. So how do we start to instrumentalize these existing infrastructures for the governance of data? I don't mean just co-ops. I'm very interested, for instance, in parent groups, like, because schools have become a big site of extraction, and parents need to be more enlivened to that data extraction and start to think about what that means collectively. If there's a CCTV and that is being offered as some big service to, parents to be like, you can watch your child do whatever every minute of every day, that data is going somewhere. What does that storage look like? Who's using it? How do we make sure that the data of our children is protected? So I think parents groups should be mobilized. I think resident welfare groups should be mobilized. MyGate is an instrument at every society in Bangalore. Every coming and going into my apartment is being tracked. Why am I not negotiating with that data extraction? And all of this is happening, and all of this has pipelines to some kind of, AI products in the current or in the next 12-month kind of future. So to me, I think that the biggest space for us as people who are not builders of AI, who are potentially users of AI, but we definitely are sources of data for AI. We need to think much more about how to collectively govern.
So, on the side of the data sources, it could be me, it could be someone belonging to an existing cooperative at, say, a village level, at a zonal level, or it could be an individual at any level again. So, when we talk about the concept of community or individual-led data governance, or their ownership over the power of negotiating or identifying that something is happening here, and how can I also be an equal, not an equal, like a decision-making stakeholder in this. So, how do we take this to those people and explain to them, communicate to them the idea of participation and the idea of consent again at the same time in the Indian context specifically, where diversity is it's the backdrop. And in extension to that, I would also like to understand, like, are there any examples that possibly you could share with us that give you hope and in retrospect maybe help us think about it in that same perspective?
Yeah, no, thank you so much for that question. I think that it ends up being this idea of like, is this too esoteric? Does it really make sense? How do we start to think about implementation? I must confess, like, I don't get down by those questions, largely because I have an enormous amount of hope because I've seen the example. So I'll give you a sense. First is the data issues are starting to come up in a big way. So if there are Swiggy protests that happen all over, or Zomato workers protesting, etc., there is a lot of pushback on like ratings se azadi. वो काफी दिखने को मिलता है, right? So what I'm saying is that harms from data extraction लोगों को अब समझ में आ रहा है. ये समझ में आ रहा है कि अच्छा मुझे लोन नहीं दिया क्योंकि मैंने जो मेरे साथ हो चुका है on a credit card, totally random denial of a credit card because a black box algorithmic denial, right? So I don't know why. So लोगों को समझ में आ रहा है कि डेटा लोग मांग रहे हैं, उसके जगह उनको there are harms that are being experienced, either it's exclusion or some kind of discrimination or increased premium on insurance or something else. So I know that things are sort of being registered at different levels, right? At the level of, like I said, the sanitation worker in a big city, in the lives of the ASHA workers who are constantly doing data entry, in the lives of teachers who are like, hum bhi data entry kar rahe hain. So there is this sense. So that's the first thing. Second is now tricky. So the extraction is established, harm is established. Now we have to say that isme value hai. This extraction is not just harmful, but one, you have claims to it. Second, there is value to it, right? And you can think about how to extract that value back in some ways. One of the examples that I've been sort of giving about this is that in the Poshan tracker, and I've said this to people in the ministry, in WCD, in METI, everywhere, and I know you guys work on Poshan as well. In the Poshan tracker, there is a one-way data extraction from the mother to the Anganwadi worker to the district, etc., etc. Ki this is for the metrics of India, right? We as India want to say nutrition pe hum ye sab kaam karen, that is very valuable. But I'm a mother. I can tell you, nobody is as obsessed with nutrition of my child as I am. Right? So now if mothers were supposed to say, okay, we're happy to contribute to the state figuring it out, right? But we also want an interface on our end on the specific sort of metrics of my child's peculiarities, because these are all generalized, right? But it is a very easy thing for the state to build, which is a mom interface for Poshan, right? And that, I think, if mothers who are in the Poshan ecosystem start to demand that this data extraction is only one way, we want to have a sort of collective position on saying, I need data value back on my child, similar things, then that is also possible. And I think that would also ease a lot of things for the Anganwadi workers. It will build buy-in into the system. It will help because mothers find the process very extractive. Chahe aap UNICEF वाले में कर लीजिए या आपके वाले में कर लीजिए, the weighing is quite traumatic. So all of this to say the value needs to be returned to the individuals and the communities, right? So, and there are examples bubbling up in various formats. In Berkeley, there's a data cooperative that is being built right now with some collaborators of ours that are trying to say that there's a lot of misrepresentation of, say, gender roles in large data sets, right? If you say, who is doing childcare, then the model likely put in a woman doing childcare. So what they're trying to do is to steward data through images of people doing non-gender specific works, and that data is going to be stewarded by the community that's that's contributing, because they want to make sure that representation is a thing that communities care about. So all I'm saying is there are so many models, and I think that what we really, really need to do is that one is, we have to find ways for all of these different models to come up. We have to discover them, which is a research question. We have to test them much more, and we have to find scale, and embed them, so deepen them, or sort of like elevate them and scale them. That's a big thing. The second is we need to find some resonance on the idea of community rights in data governance, which is a much longer arc of things to do. And the third, you asked specifically about India. I think that in India there are things happening. We need to start, as a community of people working on AI governance and things like that, start to stitch those narratives a little bit better. Because like I said, harm is being realized. There is some articulation. We just need to start to steward this into a very productive governance conversation versus what is happening, say, in the US, which is very disruptive, no data centers, those kinds of things, because communities have been shut out from benefits. They've been shut out. There's no co-design. There is so much extraction. So there is a pushback. And I think that if we don't do this conversation now, where we start to think about consultation, co-design, co-governance, benefit sharing, without that, we're also going to be in a really, really tricky space, because people are feeling the harms and people are feeling the extraction. We know that value is being accrued by a few big tech companies in another part of the world. We don't see a penny as a country. We don't see like anything as a community. So we need to start bringing people along. We need to give people the right to say no if they don't want the adoption. So we have to bake agency into this some way.
So that was very helpful to understand. I think my last question to you would be, as a data practitioner yourself, what are some of the risks as India is scaling AI? What are some of the risks that concern you? And have you thought of possible ways to either overcome those or combat those in the immediately or in the long term? Perhaps risks related to governance, accountability, the environmental cost of AI, for example.
In the context of risks and what we are focusing on at the Aarti Institute, you're absolutely right. All of those are concerns for us, which is, India just got a data protection legislation last year, 2 years ago. And it just feels like, we were a bit late on that when the rest of the world is thinking about governing AI. So I do think that governance is a big problem for us. And in the absence of governance, I find it especially worrying that we have a FOMOfication around the AI build in a lot of global south countries, right? Because we are being told by all corners that if you don't get on this bus, then you're going to be missing out. And also, if you get on the bus, then all the historical challenges that we have had will be magically sort of sorted out, right? So the schools that we never had will magically be sorted out. The doctors that we don't have will magically exist. So there is this sort of urgency, and to your point, like there is a broader paradigm of development within which the AI thing is sort of being elevated as the necessary means to all ends, right? And I worry about that, because I think that, again, to your point, that India is so diverse, India is so complicated, we have so many problems that are structural, right? That putting new technology into broken systems doesn't magically stitch those systems together. So that to me is one of the biggest worries. And therefore, I think that we need to have a very, very sort of restrained view on where we need this tech, this very potent tech that we have. How do we protect the people behind it people in front of it. We've all seen those images that went viral a few weeks ago of like textile workers with like head cameras and all. Who allowed that? Right? How do we make sure that we protect our factories, our agricultural workers, our frontline workers, etc.? How do we make sure that this technology is not replacing work? That's one part of it, but also complicating work, right? And then how do we have a clear-eyed view of what tasks can be automated and versus what jobs need to be? This whole thing of like austerity AI that like, oh, we don't need ASHA workers because what do ASHA workers do? Just provide information. This can be a bot. So I worry about it. India has structural problems that need structural solutions, not functional ones, right? And to me, AI is like a functional solution. So that's the first part. The second part, I think, is also, I worry, as I was saying, about this extraction. And I worry about it at two levels. I worry about it at the level of the community, and I worry about it at the level of the country, right? Because this extraction is like, I mean, I've spent a lot of time talking about community extraction, but there's also a lot of extraction from the country of our data resources at a time where we need to be thinking about notions of sovereignty. How do we protect our assets in this way? I think that we need a very, very concrete policy on how do we protect our data resources, because if you think of AI as like data, compute, talent we cannot control. Compute is a long way off for us. And I think that data is the place for us to really, really think about as a country. Right. And so I think Europe is doing it, other parts of the world are doing it. We need to be very, very conscious that there are two companies in the world that are taking all the data. This is our national resource. How do we think about this? So that's the second. So it's both community sovereignty, and then from the context of India, what should India do? Those also worry me. The environmental challenges worry me extraordinarily. Right. We have seen, like I said, enormous protests in the US. We have seen like Erin Brockovich style, like dirty water and all of that. There's a huge resist movement that is coming up. And so obviously people building data centers are going to pack their bags there because that's very politically like complicated, and come to us because we are rolling out the red carpet for building of data centers. We have been declared as a water poor country. How can we think about this without really doing enormous cost benefit analyses around this? We've been told data centers generate jobs, but we know that once they generate construction jobs, they don't generate data center jobs, right? It doesn't take a lot to man that. So I think that we need to be very, very clear-eyed about what our goals are around this. If it is FOMO, that's a completely different part of the game. But if it is development, I think that we need to think much more structurally around that. And then lastly, I really, really want to think much more about alternatives. There's certainly another world that is possible where we don't have this kind of extraction, where we are able, and there are lots of interesting. Karen Haas book, Empire of AI, has so many interesting examples of how Maori communities are, or not, maybe not Maoris, but some communities in New Zealand, etc., are doing things differently. There are communities out of Peru that are doing things. So, there are possibilities of alternatives. We have in Brazil community broadband ecosystems. In India, we've seen from Seva, for instance, that was stewarding solar powers. There are platform cooperatives. Another world is possible. We do not have to completely align ourselves to this current paradigm where tech companies are basically occupying spaces where public services need to exist, where community interests need to exist. And I think that we have to spend a lot of time and effort, like I said, discovering, testing, elevating those alternatives.
That was a really insightful conversation. Thank you, Astha, for taking out time and addressing the questions that we have.
No, thank you so much for having me and giving me this space to talk about our work. And it's been such a pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. And that's a wrap for today's episode. For me, this conversation has been a reminder that all AI systems are built on data, and data itself is never neutral. It is always an ongoing negotiation between communities and the institutions that use and collect that data. Perhaps to understand AI, we should understand the relationships between these stakeholders. You can follow AI Nama on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and YouTube. Do not forget to like, share, subscribe, and follow. Until then, I'm Nishtha Gorke, signing off.